The Hog's Die is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsdie.com.
The Hog's Die presents It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and Rich Rogers. And now, here's your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hog's Die Network, the show where we look at the dollars and the cents of the sports, media, industrial complex. Today, we actually have a first in our show's history. We have our first guest. That guest is Rick Snider, who's a longtime Washington sports and culture reporter, columnist, and all-around man about town. He currently writes and talks for the Washington Post and 106.7 The Fan, WJFK. He also gives tours of D.C., which you can find more details at DCTourGuideOnline.com. And he is the author of a series of novels called The Guardian Angels of Love. Welcome to the show, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it sounds like I do a little bit of everything.
Yes, a true D.C. Renaissance man.
Yeah, you'd think I'd be rich by now, but somehow the dollars and cents don't seem to work.
Unfortunately, reporters, I don't know many millionaire reporters, guys who were beat reporters and stuff. You know,
yeah,
you probably do because you probably know some guys who went to ESPN, but...
Oh, you know, the sports media business, I've been in it 40 years now. And 40 years ago, they always said you'll never make any money.
Right.
And probably in the 90s and the last decade, you know, with more opportunities, there are people who break out and do very well. But most people in the media are just, you know, right in the middle class at best.
Right.
You know, and it's back to doing it again as community, which is bull because we all know information is power and power is money. You know, you do this job because you really love it more than you should, and you work all these hours more than you should, and the companies take advantage of people like us and don't pay us fairly. But that's, I guess, another show.
Which we'd love to have you back on. That's actually a fascinating topic. So, Rick, for now, we will just consider you, Rick, the king of all DC side hustles, and ask you this. There has been a lot swirling around in the news and the media and the rumor mill about what is going on exactly with Snider, the local DC government, the federal government regarding a new stadium. So can you just kind of give us a level set of where you think we are right now with this?
Well, I think so many things changed in just the last few months. If you'd asked me back in the summer, I would say I think the stadium will go to that Loudoun County site near Dulles Airport. But among other things, two large parcels over there have been sold. One to Amazon for data service, which seems to be gobbling up Ashburn. You know, there's a big data center right across the street from Redskins Park. They're just humongous buildings, nobody around. And also a storage company actually bought a big piece over there. So I'm not sure that really there's a spot for it, and the new governor of Virginia doesn't really care. And Virginia invested in Amazon coming. That's going to be a huge cost.
Right.
You have to remember that the Virginia legislature, in the last 10 years, has finally tipped toward Northern Virginia power because of population. Before then, it was really a southern state. But they're still wary of investing huge amounts in Northern Virginia because the rest of the state wants money too. So Amazon's going to grab a lot of that money. I think that kind of took Virginia out of the game once they got Amazon. That leaves Maryland versus Virginia. Dan Snider desperately needs at least two bidders to try and get the best deal. Maryland's bid, as the governor recently said, was what they call Oxon Cove, which is basically right by the Wilson Bridge, across the highway, the inside of the Beltway from where MGM Grand is, the National Harbor. Right next to them. It's been a dairy farm. I've walked that land for 50 years probably because I grew up in the area. It's not a great piece of land in my opinion, and I think environmentalists will just rip that place apart trying to keep a stadium going there. And it's also owned by the Department of Interior, which Maryland wants to do a land swap on. And while Interior doesn't need the guy who lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to sign off on it, Trump can. You know, and Maryland's Governor Hogan, while being a Republican, has done no favors for President Trump. And so not an easy sell, in that kind of deal. I think 5 years ago I wrote a book. I picked this spot exactly to win. I don't think it can. And that now leads us back to RFK.
What is the environmental problem at Oxon Hill?
Well, listen, when they built the Wilson Bridge, I don't know, it's been 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They made them shorten it from 8 lanes to 6 lanes, which, anybody who drives the Wilson Bridge still knows it's backed up to forever. They took away the lanes because we were invading upon local snail darter kind of stuff. And the environmentalists actually got them to shorten that bridge. They're very big. That's why nothing's hardly built on the Virginia side at Alexandria.
Right.
Because everything's about the water. On the Maryland side, right at that area, you have a sewage treatment plant. So I guess we can't fight too much about water pollution over that side. But, and I will say, you put that stadium across the street from Blue Plains, anybody that's driven in there in the summer knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rick, I live right down here on, off Benning Road, so I drive by that thing more often than I should.
And in the summer, to back up, and before the days of AC, you just prayed to die. I mean, you just wanted to run over the medium and get out of there.
Yeah.
And so you put a stadium across the street, kind of amuses me, but okay, something kind of stick around there. Maybe it won't be the team. But there's environmental. One of the problems is this thing is atop a hill, and so everything's going to run off down into there, and that's a bass fishery there. Some of the best bass fishing in the nation is actually around Oxford Cove. They bring in lots of tournaments, the Bassmasters people and all. There's a big thing there, and they're just very protective of that area leading into the Potomac.
Right.
Try not. It used to be called the Potomac because that's what people call it. So I think the environmentalists will also try and delay it forever, and delays are not what you want in this situation. But they did get National Harbor through. I'll give it that. And that took about 20 years to make National Harbor a reality. So you're going to take a long time. And while Snider has some time right now, you can easily waste it, on that spot.
Yeah. Well, it feels like suddenly he's wasted the last, 3 years courting Virginia with that not happening now. I don't know if you've got more information of why that fell through. How much did the Richmond project, the failure of the whole Richmond camp, play into this? Do you think it played in at all?
Yeah, definitely. Because what happened is the Redskins cut a deal to go to Virginia. The city of Richmond thought, hey, this will be a great economic development.
Right.
Anybody out there can hear my voice that thinks they can make money doing business with the Redskins, please hire me because I will teach you how it won't work for a fraction of the cost. There's really been very little economic development. The city has taken a huge loss. The Redskins can stand innocent in this deal, and that they signed the deal. They offered it to us. We took, but there's like a couple food trucks there. That's about the only thing.
Yeah, they did not do a good job developing around it. I'll say where they put it. I've been down there a bunch of times. It's in the middle of nowhere. You're like in a back lot behind the DMV. It's awful. If you're going to try something like that, you got to build around it.
Well, and that was part of the hopes that this would spur construction, but the building they even created, which is a nice one, it's supposed to be a medical building and such, that nothing has ever happened. There has not been one tenant. So the city has lost its shirt on this deal, and the city legislators see it. And, the state legislatures have seen it, and they're pretty upset. And they kind of just open their eyes to doing business with the Redskins. It's not an easy thing. And I think that poisoned a little bit of the well. The other thing, when you mentioned they wasted a few years here, the problem that Snider had was you got to talk about these deals, but you have to do it in the right moment. And right now, it's the right moment in cycles for you have the Virginia governor going to be there another 3. Maryland's governor just was reelected. So was D.C.'s mayor. So now you have the people who are in place to cut the deal at the right time. Before, it was kind of early because you could have changed political leaders and not been able to do it. But this is now the time, and everybody's in place.
Well, let's go back to the RFK site, because you did mention that the mayor is all excited about it. But my impression has always been that the D.C. mayor doesn't have a ton of clout in Congress, obviously, and they need a core group of people in Congress, and they need the White House to approve, an extension of the current RFK Stadium site lease. I know that's what they're trying to get into the appropriations bill this year. But, is this just fantasy, or is it something that's a realistic possibility.
Before you actually go into that, let's also add on, they kind of are late in the window for the federal level here.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to the full limit here and say the appropriation bill is approved on December 21st.
Right.
And we don't shut down the government, and we don't carry it over after the holidays. Because if it doesn't get done then, Congress is recessing. They'll
right.
Merry Christmas, you've been laid off. But Congress does not want to come back on the Christmas holiday, and it could last a couple weeks. And then you have Democrats. The Democrats now will just say, we're waiting until the House is now switched on January 3rd. So you really need to cut this deal on the 21st if you don't want to go a long ways on layoffs on this stuff. But let's say it is approved. Here's a couple things in play. I mean, there's a lot of things in play. I got to tell you, everything has changed in the last 3 months. But all right, let's go down a few things. Why don't the Redskins sign Colin Kaepernick? Well, one, I'm not sure it's the greatest football decision with a few games to go. I'm thinking Chip. Not sure he'd want to come, but Dan Snider doesn't want to sign a guy that President Trump is going to be tweeting to death on in the own town that it happens. You know, you want to do this in Seattle, not in the guy's back door. Trump's going to be hammering away, and guess who has to sign off on some of this stuff for the RFK lease? The president.
Right.
So now Dan Snider can say to Trump, "Hey, listen, I need you to sign off on this. I was the lawyer soldier. I didn't sign Kaepernick when I lost 2 quarterbacks and had to have somebody. I didn't do that. And, hey, I gave $1 million to your inaugural fund, which somehow came out this week, but was actually old news. Everybody knew this 2 years ago."
Right. Well, the news is now they're worried about some other stuff with Trump and that, but we won't get into it.
Yeah, but that's not Dan Snyder's problem.
No.
I saw headlines, will Snyder be in trouble? No, he's not in any trouble for this, but Snyder's been the loyalist here, so he gets Trump's approval on this level. They need the stadium lease. The land is federal land leased to the city of D.C. They've tried to get that land from the federal government the past year, and Trump wouldn't do it, partly because 94% of D.C. voters voted against Trump. So he's not exactly charitable to local people. But on this instance now, they're trying to say, okay, you keep the land but extend the lease, because the lease only has about another 15 years to go. We can't do any big projects like this. When Trump got his hotel in D.C., they extended the lease for 60 years for him. You have to do a long-term thing,
right?
Or else you can't invest in it. Nobody will put the money in. So they're trying to get it out for, I think it's to the end of the century, 2099. So that's something that Trump will have to weigh in on. But I think they'll get it done, and they're also trying to change the zoning. And this goes to what Snyder has always wanted. They want to be able to have commercial in the area, which is also what the local population wants. And Snyder has always wanted developmental rights around the stadium. This goes back to several years ago.
Well, let's talk about that. Stop right there, Rick. Let's talk about this because we've seen that Stan Kroenke's doing that in L.A. with the new stadium. I mean, is the plan a Stan Kroenke-like massive mixed-use commercial development around this stadium, or are we talking, he's going to build a Chili's, what level of stadium is the goal here, whether it's D.C. or Maryland or even Virginia?
Well, there's mutual goals for the D.C. site. They want to have a little bit of everything, and here's the hard part: the neighborhood around there, they're called advisory neighborhood commissions, and they have a lot of political clout in D.C. They're very much against anything like a stadium, but I think the compromise will be that the stadium's there, but then they're still going to build a lot of everyday infrastructure, and Snyder's going to be able to control it. So it won't be Adventure World or something, but it'll be stuff that people can use every day. So that part of town, I was born in 1960. I've never seen that part of town have anything in it on there. So, they've taken away the jail, and, you still have the armory there, and the hospital's now gone. But
yeah, the hospital's burned out, basically, isn't it, I think, at this point? Yeah.
Yeah, so they want to have real stuff that neighborhoods should have.
Right.
And I think the compromise will come on that level. And the D.C. has proposed 3 different things. Here's another new rink on it. At one point, they really were trying to make a push to move Cap One Arena over to this area. They weren't getting any Redskins. We'll bring the entertainment venues over.
Right.
Okay, great. But now D.C. has a sports betting bill that's going to be passed, jumping way ahead of Maryland, Virginia, dragging their feet as usual. And Leota suddenly said last week to the Washington Business Journal, hey, I think I'd rather just fix this place up and stay here because why? He's going to make a lot more money in sports betting. He's all in on this.
Yeah, well, that's why he's got the arena football team. It's all about gambling now.
He's got, listen, if you ever talk to Ted Leonard, you walk away smarter. He is the smartest man in the room, in my opinion. And he's going to stay there. So suddenly you don't have that option back out on the east side either on there because he's going to make more money downtown.
Let's also talk about the current site. The what used to be called Raljon back in Mr. Cook's day. Dan already holds the title to that property in what is it, 200 acres or so? Is it possible, that he would forego public financing to just redevelop that on his own? Getting a team of banks together to just fund it. Is that even on the table?
No, because actually that land is leased. It will be given back to the county of PG in 2027. They will no longer own that land.
I thought he owned the land. I didn't realize that was a lease for the land.
Well, he does own the land, but the land reverts over to PG County.
Oh, okay.
That was title to it. I did look. He does hold title.
Okay.
Yeah, Jack Kent Cook, in his way to cut this deal, which was the fourth site he was trying, he agreed to two things. One, to build that big, center for different sports stuff on the edge of the stadium,
sure,
which is used a lot, and that the county would get the land in 2027. So what happens to it then, I don't know. The county then will own it, so he can't really stay there because he won't own it. He'll have to pay some kind of outrageous money. So that's another reason why you just don't stay and fix that up.
Okay. I didn't know that. I always thought that they owned the land free and clear, or had to pay taxes. That's it.
Is there any other? Go ahead. Sorry.
They do own it, but at 2027, the deal is they give it to PG County.
That's it.
Yeah. There's like a reversionary clause on the deed or something. But is there any other Maryland site? I don't think you could go closer to Baltimore without irritating the Ravens.
No.
Is there? And so really, it sounds like if that's a no, then we're really talking about D.C. and then Oxon Hill, and then Virginia's completely out of it. And so all of a sudden, lease or no lease, it sounds like the only thing the Redskins can really do that's a realistic possibility is D.C. And who would have thought that even 6 months ago?
Right, because they hadn't made the changes that would allow this to happen with the land lease changing, with the commercial zoning. Those kind of things are game changers.
Right.
That's why I said the last few months between Amazon and sports betting and this new bill, man, this is all changed. It's flipped it completely.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Bruce Allen's role, because my impression about this, and when I wrote about this for our site like a year ago, I said, that I think Bruce's highest and best use for the Redskins was to schmooze the Virginia politicians. But my impression has never been that he has that sort of clout in Congress. Is he still, the commander in chief of the Redskins stadium development, or is he out of it that now too? What is Bruce's piece, and for that matter, what's Bruce's future with the Redskins?
Well, you'd like to think that it's very limited in time because Bruce has done a poor job in so many respects as GM. He should have been fired years ago. He's done a few good things. He's done a few. I will always say that. Nobody's completely evil except maybe Charlie Manson or something, the guy has done a lot of amending fences with, what Dan Snider did with, say, the veterans and alumni of the team. With
sure.
Community relations, they do tons of charitable stuff. It's kind of, there's winning off the field has been great.
Well, he put as much lipstick on a pig with the improvements to the stadium that he could, but it's still a mess.
I guess. See, my opinion is when I go to ball games, do I have a seat and can I see the field? Now, I'm not really worried about anything else. I'm not sitting in the fancy seats and I'm not drinking $12 beers. But that's the new millennial generation, I guess, that worries about that.
Yeah, that's my generation. I want a good jumbotron. I want microbreweries. Yeah,
Alex knows
that's my age.
Alex knows about. I'm with him. I'm with you.
Why can't you just go watch the game?
Because I also like to have the other things on top of it. Because everyone else does.
Well, spoiled. Dude, this is different generations.
Yeah, I know.
I guess just watch the game. Eat a hot dog. I don't see the big deal of all this stuff. But,
yeah, I'm with you, Rick. But that's my go into the game too. But in terms of the stadium, does he have any involvement in what's going on with the RFK site?
He does, but I think it's very limited. He was more of a Virginia guy. His brother was the ex-governor. He knew a lot of guys there, and Virginia's legislature is not one to listen to Wall Street bankers come down and lecture them.
Right.
They've seen that. They saw that 150 years ago. So they don't really care for that type of thing. But now that that's not the real front runner, I think Dan Snider's got guys who can take it from here in D.C. So if Bruce goes away, and I think it's very possible, but I wouldn't say it's absolute yet. Let's see what the last 3 games do. If they lose the last 3 games, everyone goes. If they, somehow win and get in the playoffs, people probably stay. I think they're going to lose the last 3 and go. But so I don't think Bruce is going to have the real factor. I guess if I had to look at the legacy of what Bruce will be, it's that he kept Dan Snider from doing a lot of impulsive things that he did with Vinny Serrato, the old GM, where they just decided, there was no filter on anything. And Bruce has been that filter in a conservative way to stop a lot of dumb stuff.
I'm not sure what Bruce is. Yeah, I'm not sure what Bruce is even really doing over there, on a daily basis anymore. With Brian LaFemina taking over business ops, it seems like his only role is to hold Dan's, hands, metaphorically speaking.
Well, there's a job for that.
It also seems he's been a little bit more involved in some of the football decisions than we would care for, actually.
Yeah.
Rick, thinking about, wherever the stadium's going to be, and maybe the trend is D.C., where do you think they're starting to think about their optimal size of the stadium is? And how much do you think they care about the bells and whistles and features, to get new fans and fans back?
The microbrewery stuff I love that you don't care for, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a beer. Drink a beer and be quiet. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's not like they're they're giving you they still call Schlitz? I don't know. But, old days, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Okay, you want a fancy beer?
Yeah, if you sell $5 King cans, I'll drive down and go.
Yeah.
How much are these funny, microbrewery beers costing you? $15?
Well, they I think at most stadiums they're about $1 more than the regular beers now.
Oh, okay. All right. That's all right then. That's like getting kettle corn stuff out
right.
I guess.
Right.
Anyway, 60,000 sounds about right, and that's because not just the Redskins, but if you look league-wide and sports-wide, live attendance is down. People want to watch on TV. They want to do so many other things. They don't go to games as much. So you don't need more than 60. And, there's nothing wrong with creating a little tension to get tickets, one day.
Sure.
Where you just don't say, hey, we're wide open. And, the more...
You mean like right now when 10,000 people show up?
Right. Yeah, it was about 10,000 Redskins fans at the last game. And about 20,000 Giants fans. So, yeah. But, you start winning, that helps a little, but a crowded house is tougher to get into. So 60 is probably it. 60 would fit perfectly on the RFK site.
Right.
So, that's a big thing, because if you had a bigger stadium, you got to change the imprint. You got those old bridges. You got several $100 million more going into that. Whether it's a dome, I don't know. I've talked to people involved that say a dome can cost 100 to 300 million more on the overall tag.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure. I've not heard anything about whether they're going to do that. They should. I think that's the future. But and coming back to DC, I think we'll be able to get more access to the next generation of fans, because that's what we're really looking for. The RFK people have aged out. They're pretty much not coming anymore.
Right.
So now you have to approach this new, younger generation. Make it easier. It's on the metro. It's in the city. It's, put it out loud in the county. It's just stupid. They're not, even if you do build a metro out there, people aren't doing that now. You don't need as much tailgate space anymore. Things are changing. We have to think not about today and the past. We have to think about 2027 to 2057. What is the change going to be? The trends all show people moving back into the cities more, the young people wanting the public transportation, with all that kind of stuff. And that lends to a city place right there. And so a smaller stadium will fit into that. I think they'll go with every bell and whistle they can. Oh, there's a moat on the board, for this thing where you can water ski around it in the summer. That's one of the silly things.
That was on that one rendering.
Do you really want to water ski and water from the Anacostia yet? That's the other.
Yeah, I mean that, and every Cowboy fan's going to be in there thrown off the bridges after a game. I mean,
Now you're making me promote. Now you're making me.
Yeah, that's only. It must have alligators to be viable, in my opinion.
I mean, you're going to have razor wire around this thing. It's going to look real friendly. I mean, oh my God.
Back when I was representing a couple NFL teams and we was involved in a couple stadium projects like this, the NFL had a minimum. The NFL back then, and this was several years ago now, did not want you to build less than about 65,000. And so I wonder about the viability of a stadium that, while very small, would be advantageous for the Redskins if that's something that the NFL would go with, and something the NFL would ever bring a Super Bowl to a new stadium with if you're only looking at a 60,000-foot stadium, or not foot, but a seat stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what Tampa is anymore. It's kind of a smaller one. Atlanta's not a real big one either.
Even though their stadium imprint is huge on their new stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know that we'll ever get a Super Bowl here anyway. I mean, you want warm weather places. I know the owners. I know what they want. They want somewhere where they can go party, believe it or not. Go party somewhere warm in a friendly city that's proven. And the Super Bowl rotation has always been Miami, Tampa for some reason, but I guess it's warm. It's a nice city enough for it. New Orleans, they're going to go back to L.A. now.
Right.
Phoenix, but they throw one every 6, 8, 10 years to a cold weather place.
Yeah, Minnesota's getting. Did Minnesota just have one, or they're getting one? I think.
Well, they have a dome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did the Minnesota one. The Redskins won in '92 and January '92. And, it snowed like crazy. It was 20 below. I mean, it was miserable.
Wasn't it like an Ice Capades thing at halftime, too? Something ridiculous,
That was before, yeah. This is a little bit off the stadium topic, but since we have you here, Redskins fans, I think, are tired of Dan Snider, obviously, and you see constant haranguing, in the fan base and this and that. What I really wonder is, what kind of reputation does he have amongst other NFL owners? I mean, is this just Redskins fans being tired of losing, or is there something to the idea that he's not respected amongst the other NFL owners and in the front office?
He's not particularly liked because, well, it goes back to the Spurrier deal. He paid Spurrier so much more than other coaches. And suddenly, the rest of the NFL looks around and says, I want more money too. And now the owners are saying, Dan, you cost us money. And, that started the antagonism. He doesn't really serve on any of the major panels. He doesn't do the heavy lifting like some guys do. He gets into, he's not exactly the nicest person to deal with. The guys like Maris and all, they just did not like him at all, which is how they did I thought it was wrong when they did that $36 million salary cap hit on him. I thought that was an unfair thing. But, no, he's not like at the elite level. He doesn't get favors like some people would.
Rick, a couple, obviously Snyder's made a lot of money in his career, in and out of football. He's also taken some pretty large fails in terms of his other business ventures, the fast food and the theme parks, etc. Do you think he's in a financial place to be able to foot the bill for the stadium wherever it is on his own, or is he going to be heavily reliant on public or private financing here?
I don't know that he could necessarily summon the cash for this, but the team is, I think, worth $3.2 billion, if I remember. So he's got, he doesn't owe that much. Unless doesn't owe a lot unless I don't know about things, which it's a private company. They don't have to tell you. Jack and Cook, everyone thought was a billionaire, and then when he died, it turned out the only thing he owned really was the team. The Chrysler building, all these things were leveraged. So you never really know what these guys are up to. But, man, he just makes so much money every year that, I think he'll have no problem accessing the funds. They say that a stadium like this will cost, $1.9 billion is a common number, but let's just say there's no land cost here. That's a big difference. You're just building the stadium. And that might be $1 billion, something like that, which I'm sure he's going to get money from somebody somewhere. That's all part of the deal. He's not going to reach in his own pocket like Cook did. But Cook did it for $200 million. big difference.
And Cook had a development loan that we're still being paid, even today. That's the thing. I mean, I can't, I don't know because Dan Snider doesn't have the cash, he can't lean up the team. The NFL won't let him do that. And so the only thing left is to, provide a lien on the stadium. And if he doesn't own the land, it seems to me he's almost has to rely on public funds. But DC, I don't think the city of DC is in any position to loan him, several $100 million. And so that leaves what?
Well, there's the interesting part on that. Before you might have said that, but now that the sports betting bill is coming, how is that going to be structured? How's that? It's going to make a ton of money. I mean, let's look. MGM Casino over in Oxon Hill is making $50 million a year in state taxes. $50 million a month.
Oh my God.
$600 million in a year. Okay, I'm not sure where that money's gone. I haven't seen anything. The roads aren't paved with gold, but whatever. But it's this filings have shown that. So the sports betting bill is going to make the city a lot of money, and I would think that some of it would be targeted toward the stadium. There's your funding source.
Well, and they've done other things with, I know the Nats, they did some creative tax incentive stuff to foot the bill for the Nats stadium. This city's
but Alex,
pretty good at funding that type of stuff.
The city took a loan, from a private financing source to pay the bulk of that, and they're paying debt service, so like $40 million a year debt service on it.
Yeah, but
can the city do that again?
They find ways. They've got a guy in D.C., I understand, who's very good at finding ways to get money for stadiums. That's all I've heard.
They got a guy.
Yeah.
Rick, let's take this a little bit in a slightly different direction. We're obviously coming off a summer, with a Stanley Cup championship, packed house, people in the street, parades, all of that. So there's probably a little bit of FOMO going on out at Redskins Park. And we also have, we sit here at the tail end of another season that feels like, a new rock bottom. Everyone's rating Redskins rock bottoms over the last 25 years, and this is charting in top 3. And we've seen Snider coming off of other rock bottoms, do these kind of big moves. The Gibbs, Shanahan, fire Vinny, trade the house for number 2 draft pick. The timing of this, and maybe the reality that a move back to DC and the connection to the RFK site feels like one of the only Hail Marys to start to re-energize the fan base. Do you see, with the leaks and the timing of the announcement, do you see any connection between this as a PR move, or at least the release of these conversations as a PR move for the team, given the overall place they find themselves?
Well, it would be easy to assume that, that's for sure. And maybe, but I know this work has been ongoing, and the timing of it with the appropriations bill and all kind of is coincidental in some respects. So I don't think they've quite created it that way, but it certainly benefits.
Well, can I just ask a follow-up? Because I know you work with, it was Liz who first came out with the story, right? And I know you've worked with her. Do you think, do you know where she kind of was starting to get it? Like, do you think it was leaked by the team, or was this just good old-fashioned reporting?
Well, I am paid by the Post, but I work for the Express edition, not the main edition.
Right.
The Express is the one to hand out to 200,000 people on the subway.
Yeah, I know. I read it every day.
Okay, thanks. So you get it for free, so we appreciate your business. I can't speak to where Liz got things. That's her business, and I would never out her. There has been talk about that it was first seen by a congressional reporter going through pending legislation.
Okay,
is what I've heard. So other than that, I don't really know anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask you to out anybody. I just didn't know how much you were able to say about how that came out.
So even if you strip... Oh, go ahead.
I've made a living out of keeping secrets.
So, Rick, if we strip away the cynicism about leaks or the timing and just look at it from obviously they are in a fan base problem. Do you think a move to D.C. would actually help reverse the trend of, just their fan base in general and kind of the social capital of the team in the area?
I think it gives them the bigger opportunity of everything to do so. Now, it comes down to the end of winning, more than anything. I've had this conversation more than 100 times, I'll bet, in the last 3 years with people who gave up their season tickets that they've had for generations.
Right.
They just can't take it anymore. And I say, they go, it's this, it's this, it's this. I said, let me ask you one question. If this team was heading to the Super Bowl, would you still keep your tickets? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Then the rest of it doesn't matter. It's about winning and losing. And they've got to get better. And I don't know how they're going to do that. This Alex Smith injury has really hurt them for the short term on this. And whatever they have going on today really will have nothing to do with 10 years from now when they're in the new stadium. There might be one player on this team that's going to still be there. But Snider's consistently shown that he can't produce a winner, however he does things. So unless he gets incredibly lucky and hires the right coach, it's just going to be so-so. And I think there'll be a short-term boom when they come back to D.C. if they do for a few years. But then you're back on your own again, on your own merits.
Well, it's interesting you say this because, I'm like you, and I think it's really sort of winning cures all. And that leads me to wonder really whether, Dan Snider, any owner, really wants to spend or borrow or cajole government out of an enormous amount of money to build a super nice, Alex Zeese approved stadium, or whether a more minimalist effort is okay, given the fact that really and truly, attracting people there is more about winning than it is how many bars and restaurants you can put around it.
Well, my generation says minimalist is fine. Your generation says no. And they have to cater to your generation. So they're going to have to go with every bell and whistle and everything they can get, or else you guys are just going to be unhappy and not come. So, maybe we'll have craft beers and whatever's coming up in 10 years from now.
Yeah, but by the time the stadium's built, Rick, I'm going to be closer to your age than, the age that they're going to be targeting.
Well, and first of all, I'm more closer in mental in my outlook than to Rick's view than Alex.
I think you might actually be a little older than Rick when it comes to mental.
Maybe
they should give everybody virtual reality headsets, and then maybe in those things, maybe the Redskins are winning inside those things. I
sure.
Don't know.
Well, the problem though, actually, is it's less millennial. Catering to millennial taste, and something you said earlier, Rick, which actually the VR headset experience speaks to. The at-home experience of watching football is far superior, and you're essentially being able to put, especially in, relation to your living room, Jumbotron-sized screens in your home. So, the more they innovate on that piece of it, it just lessens the need to go, which I think is another thing that drives the bells and whistles discussion.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I was at a league NFL owners meeting, and a guy stepped forward who covered the TV industry, and he started asking questions of the owners about how they saw HD TV change things. And I thought, what in the world is he talking about? I don't know who that dude was, but he was a visionary. He saw it all coming 20 years ago, and the NFL owners had no clue what he was discussing then. Just shows you how things have changed. What's TV going to be like in 10 years from now? You probably feel like you're in the game, watching these things, with the way they do virtual reality, and you're going to feel like you're lining up and playing or something.
It'll all be shot on drone, that'll be one thing.
Well, I mean, to me, the big advantage of being at a game is you can see the whole field, and you can't see that on TV. So to me, that's the next step in television production of football games, is allowing alternative views.
Right, multi-screen.
Yeah.
Well, I think somehow you could put sensors on so you could feel the hits and all.
I don't know if I'd want to.
I'm sure that'll help.
Kidding me?
Take that off real quick, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've now devolved into writing a next episode of Black Mirror or something about so that might be a good time to draw us to a close. Rick, we want to thank you so much for joining us. As your informed opinion, both of the culture of the DC area and the specifics of this, really helped out our conversation here, as we want to really bring our listeners the best and the most insightful conversation. Where can people find you and give us your litany of side hustles?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter, which is Snide_remarks. There's a few people who follow me there. I have, incoherent rants at times on there. That's the best thing. I don't do Facebook for public or anything.
Although sometimes they're coherent. You had some coherent ones earlier this week.
Yeah. It's weird. Some days I actually wake up and do stuff, but I don't do the rest of the social media. I'm not into Instagramming and all that stuff. So. You can find me on the, Washington Post site for my Express column, and also WJFK 1067 The Fan, his website. I write for them regularly, and other places. And I also do tour guiding. I've been a guide for about 9 years now, because I'm a third-generation guide in the city. My family's been here since 1810. So we know all the dope, what goes on. I take people around town, do private tours all the time. You can monumentalthoughts.com is my easier way to find my tour guide website. And if you want to go out, I'll take you around. We'll go talk about whatever. I do tours all the time for lots of folks, mostly because I need the money. And, writing a book, and I'm trying to get that to market. That'll be another show because it's a little ways away. And I'm actually starting a wine website, too. So I'm trying, I'm a little bored with sports, to be honest. You do it 40 years. I've heard, everything and seen everything, but I still have to make money, so I write for sports, and we're trying to branch out, my latter years here and do some different things. Hopefully the Southern Maryland wine.com will be online in the next couple of months. So a little bit of everything.
Well, we love you, Rick, and thanks very much for coming on the show as always, and you've always got great insights, and so we look forward to having you on the show again for another business-related topic.
All right, guys, we'll see you.
All right, thanks, Rick.
Have a great one.
All right, well, that was our chat with Rick Snider about all things Redskins, possible stadium deals. That was a lot. We had a lot of different angles and a lot of great insights. What was maybe one of the things that you took away, each of you, from that interview that was either new information, a new take, something that surprised you from his comments?
Well, what surprised me that I'd never thought about was the environmental issues going on at the Oxon Hill site. I had never thought about that, and I've thought a lot about this, as you guys know. I've written a lot about this. That surprised me, and that is something that I think Jack Kent Cooke faced, when he was trying to develop, every site in the D.C. area, back, 25 years ago now. That surprised me quite a bit. And the new information really is that the state of Virginia basically took the Amazon. Took the Redskins money, basically. Those two things I think were very insightful for me.
I think those are both great points. I mean, I always just love talking to Rick about this stuff. We've all mentioned off air, Rick Snider's easily the most knowledgeable person about the Redskins stadium.
Oh
stuff, who's not with the Redskins. And
that's why we had him on this show.
Yeah, he might even be smarter than some of the people who work for the Redskins about this stuff.
They need to hire him. That's what they need to do.
Low bar.
Yeah, well, there's that. But honestly, I'd also put Steve up there because Steve has some experience that he doesn't really talk about when it comes to this stuff. So that was a heck of a whole interview discussion about this stadium topic. I don't think you will find a more in-depth discussion on any podcast than what we just had.
Yeah.
I agree with all those things, +1, etc. I guess wasn't shocked, but it is pretty amazing to hear that he would say 60,000 is the sweet spot.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's too low. I'm telling you, the NFL probably won't want to do on a new stadium less than about 65. And if they have any desire to have a Super Bowl, it's going to have to be closer to 70. And what
and
some
for
stadiums
a Super Bowl, obviously.
Well, I know not necessarily. I mean, they played the Super Bowl in New York, and that's not a dome. But it does the base capacity doesn't need to be 70 to have a stadium, but it needs to be expandable. What some stadiums have done is throw in extra seats, to get it up to about 70, because that's about the lowest the
like
NFL
the Cowboys
will do
stadium, doesn't that go from like a normal of like something like 80 to 120 or something ridiculous?
Well, see, the Cowboys, they're not putting in seats, though. The Cowboys have got big party decks and where you can stand around.
Right.
Yeah, they have standing room only type options.
Yeah, that's where that happens. But the Cowboys are way, way, way over the mandatory minimum.
But I'm just saying,
anyway.
Maybe that's what the Redskins should be looking at is you get around 60 to 65 and then, another 10K.
Yeah, but the NFL's going to want seats, so you got to have about 70,000 seats. Okay. Unless something's changed in the past couple of years, and I doubt it has, but you got to have about 70,000. And again, some stadiums have put in extra seats, because you can take you can insert and take those things out, if you really have to. So I think 60 is too low. I mean, Rick knows more than I'm not questioning Rick. He knows, more than any of us ever will about it. But I think 60 is a bit too low.
Well, I think it was an answer more on the reality of what they think they can fill, rather than what they think the NFL might look kindly to. And the other piece that's really super interesting is we'll see if the NFL allows like a 60, 65. It means they're looking at long-term trends about where they think attendance is going
that's
league-wide, which Rick hit on as well. So it'll be a really interesting clue to see how the NFL reacts to the size of it, where they think their future is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was dead serious about the future of the NFL broadcast needs to include alternative views. Because I really do. The reason why I don't like Alex knows I'm not into the beer and all that stuff. I couldn't care less about any of that. But the reason why I like to go to games, and I don't go to very many because it costs so much. But the reason is so I can see the entire field.
Sure.
And you just can't see that on the broadcast. And so I think if the NFL changed their broadcast to include that, it would be a tremendous step up. And, heck, it may be a contrary to their interests if they give people even less of a reason to go to the games, I guess. But that's what I'd like to see in the future broadcasts.
All right. So
go
ahead, Alex.
No, I think that's right. The only thing we didn't really delve too deep into is there's a whole political angle to them getting RFK still that is going to, really make this more complicated. And, I know this shows more about the business side of it, but...
Such as what?
Well, just you have a transition from one party to another still. You have at least 2 presidential elections before the Redskins are able to move back. There's a lot of that kind of stuff on the federal level that could impact the RFK deal still.
Yeah, they don't need to have a lease in place now,
right?
Necessarily, but realistically, getting a stadium deal done, finance, contracts in place, built and stuff, you're looking at like 8, 9, 10 years. At a minute, that's the sweet spot. And so if you wait through the Trump administration, and wait through 2020, if you had to, that's really not really enough time. You never say never, but that's a shorter than your average.
And you have no assurance of, will another administration be more favorable?
Exactly.
Well, it's also what does give, even though we all acknowledge that the local D.C. government is the weakest player in this, it does where their support and advocacy for this does help, especially in Congress, keep, congressional Dems favorable.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the name is still an issue for the Democrats in Congress because they've said it. This has come up. There's no more legal issue surrounding it, but I don't think certain Democrats in Congress, support the name, and I don't know if they're going to vote for or support a new stadium in Washington, D.C. for the Redskins if it's still the Redskins. And right now, the Democrats are about to take control of the House, which is why he was talking about if this is going to get done, it needs to get done before the 21st, which is next week. Right. That's why.
Right, which is and beholden to way more things than this issue. So if this, which I think is a smart political play to basically attach us as a piece of pork to a giant appropriations bill. But if that whole thing is screaming towards problems, then this is issue number 1,792 that's derailed in that process.
Yeah, is it even that high?
Right. Yeah, right.
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, Rick talked about this. Surprised me a little bit that Rick mentioned that President Trump, isn't necessarily inclined to help out D.C. given the voting. That
right
85% of the people, whatever the numbers voted for.
It was more like 97.
Okay, the 97. Yeah. I've kind of got the sense over the past year or so that it's not really that he's actively trying to. President Trump is actively trying to hurt DC or anything. I just don't think that this is really an issue that anybody cares about outside of our little sports world. I mean, I just don't think it's all that important to anybody except Redskins fans.
I think that there are evidence of regional preferences based on 2016 voting. I actually don't think this is one of those. And I think his power, influence, and money relationship with someone like Dan Snider would trump that anyway.
Yeah, well, the only thing that I would say might hinder him, his beef with the NFL that goes back to the 80s.
I just think you guys are reading too much into this.
Well, I mean, they rejected him from buying the Bills. They rejected.
I understand all that, and there was the USFL lawsuit, but I just think that in our world, this is a big deal. But in the scope of the operation of the federal government, this is something that barely registers on the radar scope.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying that his relationship as a big money donor to Snider is probably, if anything matters, is the thing that will matter most.
I
think that's fair.
Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe Dan Snider should offer to sell him the land that FedEx is on or something. I don't know.
Can't do that when he's the president.
Well,
All right, so let's, Alex, thanks for jumping in and being our third leg of the stool and our engineer today. So
we need to get you guys a mixer so you can start doing this.
I'd rather just make you do it.
We see nothing broken here. All right, Alex, where can people tell you you're being rude on Twitter?
Well, Alex35332 on Twitter, and that's it.
And Steve squatting at the Hogsty account.
Yeah, I mean, and if people knew how many times Alex's pets have almost derailed interviews, you'd be surprised. Yeah. No, I'm not on Twitter, but you can generally find me at the Hogsty.
And I'm at ChrisLarry33, and we will see you in roughly 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.